I failed out of art school. I'm learning how to do this just like you. I don't know what I'm doing, but boy, am I going to try my hardest.
How do you develop your personal brand, telling the story you want to be given over on social media?
That's what I've been doing for the past 5 years at this point, is writing from what I know, trying to keep it authentic to me. I was really grateful I was able to get into like a second round of a Netflix apprenticeship for animation. I try my best as I'm creating to know that perfect is not achievable, and it's never going to be exactly the way I envisioned it.
In a world flooded with copy-paste content, what truly makes art authentic? What makes it stand out? And more importantly, what makes you authentic as a creative? Today we're diving into that exact question. And our guest has built an entire brand by mastering it. Welcome to the Mo Method, where we talk to creatives who have turned their passions into professions. Today's guest is Mike Shirdan, a self-taught digital artist and animator whose unique fusion of 2D and 3D techniques has captivated a worldwide audience. Mike's journey isn't just about mastering software. It's a deep dive into balancing passion with professional opportunities, navigating creative blocks, and building a truly powerful personal brand in a super saturated market. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us continue to bring these conversations that truly matter. Without further ado, here's Mike Shirdan.
Hi, I'm Mike Shirdan. I'm a digital artist and animator.
So I've been following you for a little while on Instagram, and one thing that really caught my attention, and like I really respect, is your dedication to the craft. Like clearly, from what it looks like, it looks like you're kind of self-taught. You've been doing this all, teaching yourself all the different skills in 2D and 3D animation. It looks like based off your Instagram. So I guess let's start from the beginning. How did you get into it? How did you get into art and animation and all these things?
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you're right. I've been doing it all by myself, been learning it all by myself. Been doing digital art for, I want to say, about a decade at this point, and animation about 3 to 4 years. So how I got started in it, I've always been interested in animation and digital art, but I kind of felt like it was something that I wouldn't be able to do unless I went to college for it. So I went to college for it, and I failed out of all the art classes that I was taking just because it was not really, how do I put this? It was more about skills and technique rather than expression, and I struggled with that in school. So I ended up going into marketing and doing art on the side. So how I ended up here is really just through, if I can't learn in school, I got to teach myself. And that's where I started going to YouTube and learning how to do it myself. And it's a wonderful way that you're able to find me through all those different methods.
So can you kind of walk me through your process? Post school, we kind of leave that in the past. But so you started in 2D, or you started, because your stuff is 2D animation primarily, right? But I also see you're kind of moving into Blender and stuff of that nature. So what kind of was the journey for you?
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of 2D. So I was doing pop culture art. So like I was mixing, like if a Marvel movie was coming out, I'd mix that with something else that I knew that other people would like. And I would do it in a 2D format in digital art. But when the pandemic hit, I really was trying to figure out, how do I branch out, do something, keep things a little bit more exciting in my artwork. So I learned how to do, or taught myself how to do Blender. So it really has been how do I mix these two worlds? And there is a little bit of a level of how do I mask some of my flaws that I have in my art? Like I'm thinking specifically, like background art is not my specialty. So I learned how to do that in 3D artwork, and now it's become a bit of a merge between two different styles at this point.
Oh, very cool. So what's kind of your goal? Like you wanna primarily focus on the 2D stuff, or you want to primarily focus on the 3D, or you kind of like doing this sort of hybrid thing you got going on?
It's a bit of a hybrid. I think that's kind of where I want to keep it for the moment, because my goal in the end is to be able to. So right now I have one show, Sun and the Jewel of Ove. That's a show concept that I did a trailer for. And I have multiple other show concepts that I want to do the same thing for. So I want to be able to have pitch decks ready, also characters and so forth, along with trailers. So if the magic opportunity ever comes up that I'm able to pitch these concepts, that I have these things ready to go. So it's going to be a mix of a 2D, 3D combination, especially as a one-person team, and as I'm kind of doing these things only on the weekends. So it's definitely something where I'm trying to figure out the best way to move forward. But the goal is to have it be in a 2D, 3D format in the future.
Nice, nice. I mean, it's kind of cool. I've had this conversation a lot with a lot of people about how in like in today's day and age, obviously it's great to have your pitch decks and kind of be ready for when the opportunity presents itself. Somebody was just telling me the other day about the importance of being prepared, and when I asked them to elaborate on that, they were explaining how, if there you kind of have a dream job, right? If you want to work as a 3D modeler for Funko, let's say, right? So kind of
Yeah.
kind of create the portfolio that when the opportunity presents itself, you're ready to go and be like, yeah, look, here, check out my work that I've done that kind of is catered to what they're looking for. Um, but I would say like specifically with the kind of animation stuff, I feel like you really, in theory, could go out and kind of do it on your own without having to and obviously there's the financial aspect to it, but you really could kind of go out there and make your own show and put it out on YouTube, even if it's not
Hmm.
half-hour episodes or hour-long episodes, but kind of doing like short episodes, and kind of building up that following. Have you considered kind of doing something of that sort?
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are my peers who have been doing that in a great way. I know there's a few that I follow, like on TikTok, for example, that are now up to like episode 5 of their own self-produced stuff that they put on YouTube, and that is exactly the end goal that I'm hoping to accomplish with my work. So after the trailers, I do have episodes written that when I have time after all the trailers are completed, I'm gonna go back through and do some episodic stuff on YouTube. So I have seen others do really great stuff and try to do it in more of a self-published way. But I think it's kind of at the point now with my artwork that I'm going to be trying to find grants. I'm going to be trying to find others to help me because I think it's getting to a point where, yes, I can do this on my own, but now that the interest and the demand for others, for my art has become increased, the pressure of putting out those projects is also increased.
Right, for sure. So, can you kind of talk about some of your projects? I saw some of your trailers, so I know like there's one that
Yeah.
was kind of like correct me if I'm wrong. It was like a boxing, but like
Yeah.
superpower kind of fighting
Yeah.
situation. It was really cool. Really, that really kind of caught my attention. I really enjoyed that. So, can you kind of like talk about the different projects you have? I don't know how much you can share, how much you don't want to share, but
So I have 3 projects going on at the moment. I have Sun the Jewel of Ove, I have Doom Destiny Wrestling, and I have Clocked Out. So Sun the Jewel of Ove is one where there is an alien attack happening in Philadelphia. The main character, Sun, is trying to stop these alien forces from taking over the city and the overall world. So that one has a trailer out and also has 2 episodes written. And then the one that you were mentioning, Doom Destiny Wrestling, is a wrestling show. I'm big into professional wrestling, so I wanted to make one that was kind of in a spiritual, mystical kind of way. It really speaks to, being from Philadelphia, the rocky story of the underdog, the someone who's just needs a person of circumstances trying to get through the motions and trying to get to a better life. So, what happens when a company takes advantage of someone just trying to make a better life for themselves? That's where Doom Destiny comes into play. And then Clocked Out's the last one that I'm really working on at the moment. And it's about 3 workers at a fast food restaurant and talking about their times off the clock while they're on the clock. But the twist of it is that all of them are lying about the stories that they tell. So they'll have these grand, giant stories that they talk about that they did over while maybe it was on the weekend or whenever they were on break. But they're just really trying to get these other people to be their friend, think they're interesting by telling these grand stories.
cool. Oh, it sounds like these are really, really
Hmm.
creative and really original stuff. I really, really enjoy it. That's really cool. So, what's kind of like
Thank
what's
you.
some of your like inspiration? Like, what are some of the shows that you kind of like grew up on that kind of shaped your like storytelling and kind of animation style and all those things? Because I mean, clearly you must be a fan of animation.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of animation. I think I talk about it often that Hey Arnold is probably the biggest inspiration for everything that I've done. I think Hey Arnold has a very interesting way of showing what it's like to be a real person that a lot of other shows didn't capture. I think also, as Told by Ginger, did that as well. Of like, these are just real people. Maybe some zany or outlandish things happen during the course of an episode, but it feels so grounded in reality that people really relate to the characters. So I've been really inspired by that in my youth, but also bringing some anime inspiration to like Team Destiny Wrestling, like big Dragon Ball fan. So trying to have that also be an inspiration into the work in the more action style approach. But I always talk about when I'm in these kinds of formats that for a long period of time I wasn't into animation. So like everyone has those times of moments where they're like, "Oh, animation's for kids." Kind of outgrow it for a long period of
Right.
time. And then I had when, for me personally, it was like Steven Universe brought me back to it. I had zoned completely out of animation, and I had a friend at the time tell me, "Hey, you need to check this out." And it was just so different than anything that I had watched on TV with some of these deep storytelling aspects that are usually missed out on kids' television programs. So it was really cool to get back into the animation swing of things, and now animation's in a new renaissance lately with so many things from Netflix and Cartoon Network and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to like focus on one thing that you said, and then I want to ask you another
Yeah.
question. But and that is like it's interesting. They're kind of this like period of time. I don't know. I can't quite place the exact dates, but like it kind of was like the times like we kind of were, I guess, teenagers, somewhere in that kind of range
Hmm.
where there kind of was this like maturation of animation, where like it kind of went from like the SpongeBob's and like the silly like kids shows to like
Yeah.
more still geared towards a younger audience, but like with more serious themes that it touched on. And I think there were some kids shows growing up that did that as well, but I think it really started, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years ago. It really started kind of like becoming more and more mainstream. And you have like Gravity Falls was like that. Like you
Hmm.
said, Steven Universe. There are a lot of these shows that started coming out
Last Airbender too.
that the Last Airbender is a great example. I mean, I grew up on
Hmm.
on Last Airbender and Teen Titans and those shows, which like for me like those were my bread and butter. I love to this day. Like I still
Yeah.
think that those were some of the greatest shows. Like they were so good, and
Hmm.
I love that animation has really matured. You know, to the extent that it has. And like I think a lot of it is because a lot of, kind of the kids who grew up with those great shows back then are now the ones making the shows. And so like for me, like right now Invincible's probably my favorite show,
Oh yeah.
that's being put out right now. And it's so good, and what I love about animation for me personally is that it gives you so much more freedom than live action, and VFX, right? Because whenever you're dealing with VFX, the budget just goes up exponentially. So if you want
Yeah.
to do like, let's say like you talked about Dragon Ball Z, right? Like if you want to do those kinds of effects with live action and VFX, A, it's gonna look super cheesy, and B, to make it look good, it's going to be super expensive, right? You're going to be paying a fortune in VFX, whereas animation is expensive because you're doing the drawing and whatnot, but it's a lot more feasible, and so it allows for like
Yeah.
grander scale storytelling, which is I love it. For me, it's like another great show. Like I love the Clone Wars, like that whole animated series. You know, these just great shows that, like you're saying, like there was this kind of like stigma for a long time of like, oh, it's for kids, but I don't think that's the case anymore. And I think already for a few years it's been that way, and it's kind of taken the mainstream, I guess, to like catch up. It's taken a little bit more time, but I think it's really kind of getting its spotlight that it deserves now, and I love it. For me, it makes me really happy.
Yeah, for sure.
So Can you talk about a little bit like some of the stuff, some of your like learning experiences with Blender and with 2D? Um, what was kind of what kind of were your methods of learning these different skills and crafts? Because they're not easy things to learn, you know. And obviously there's a tremendous amount of resources out there, but to kind of take on 2D and 3D simultaneously is not a small undertaking.
Yeah, so where it kind of comes in is I try to find a big project that I'm trying to work on. So, for example, at the end of last year, I wanted to do a massive Wicked piece because I knew that was going to be a pop culture thing that people were going to be talking about at the moment. So, for example, what I would try to do is let me figure out how to build a room from a 3D space, from a 2D image. Go to Google, go to YouTube, find out how to do that from one of the press photos that they might release. So I'm learning how to, if there's a column in the photo, I'm going on YouTube, look up how to make a column in Blender, and then using some artistic interpretation of how to make sure that happens. So it is very much like a start and stop, learning on the fly, while also on that one specifically, I was making a tutorial while I was learning through YouTube at the same time. So very messy, but it was able to, generate a lot of content at the end of the day.
That's really cool. Like I said, like I started with a conversation. Like I'm really impressed with like you're definitely very ambitious in your approach to like taking all this stuff on. But I gotta say, the work speaks for itself. It's really really impressive stuff that you're doing. I like, I really enjoy your work. I think it looks really really good. You got a really
Thank
cool
you.
style. I think is really unique. So like I think you're definitely I think you're onto something. That's for sure. Um,
Thank you very much.
so let me ask you like, what's your process of kind of like navigating from initial concept to final product? Because it sounds like you're, as of right now, it sounds like you're kind of a one man band. You're doing the writing
Yeah.
and the animation and the 3D. So what's kind of your like process to kind of like go from your initial idea to what you're putting out there?
Yeah, so it's the nice thing about it is that I work in social media for my 9 to 5. So what I usually do as I'm tackling these kinds of projects is think about what's the story that I want to tell on social media, so I can generate more interest in my projects. So what I'll do, for example, is I know that I wanted to make a trailer for Doom Destiny Wrestling that was coming up, and I'd been working on it. So I started thinking about what's a plight or a struggle that I've been going through, and it's feeling overwhelmed by all the work that I've been doing. To your point of being a one-person group, just hours and hours and hours of me learning how to do all these different things. So I use that to then animate a situation where I'm getting punched in the face of me encountering the fact that you can't give up. You keep going, moving forward, while also using this piece of content to teach myself how to animate a scene that I'm going to be using for Doom Destiny Wrestling. So my process is really convoluted and a bit all over the place, but it comes from how can I learn to do the next thing that I'm going to be trying to do. It's almost like I talked about it and some other people on my social media. It's kind of like a Pixar approach where if you know that you are going to make Rapunzel or Tangled, for example, why don't we make a short that's about hair and how hair flows to be able to learn how to do it in a non-intense and pressurized way. So when we start working on Tangled, we know, hey, this is what worked on the last project. Let's put this into action, and we already are ahead of the game because we've done this already.
Yeah, it's a cool approach. It's cool because like it's cool that you're kind of learning, and it's definitely a unique approach, I think, but I think it's a very good one to like kind of learn and implement and refine and and kind of like it's very cool, very unique. I mean, I'm sure there are people who do it,
Thank
but
you.
like it's not so common. I gotta say, like it's definitely. I think a lot of people kind of like play it safe. They're like, okay, I'm gonna watch hours and hours of YouTube tutorials, and I'm gonna practice and practice until I get it perfect, and then maybe I'll
Yes.
put myself out there, But it's cool that you're kind of like, you're not afraid to take those risks. And I think ultimately that's gonna really do you more good than harm. So yeah, that's definitely a
Yeah,
solid way to approach the situation. Um, so let me ask
I
you, because
appreciate that.
in I'm sure in all this, like in all your learning and practicing and trying and failing, like I'm sure there are times you kind of hit creative blocks and times where things kind of get frustrating. So how do you kind of deal with that? How do you get over those creative blocks and those times you just like so frustrated you want to throw your computer at the wall?
Yeah, for sure. I think um, those are always a hard time for me. I think I'm someone who has ADHD, so it's already hard enough for me to focus on one task at the same time. Uh, but when in recent history, I've found there's this movie called Tick Tick Boom that's all about the creator of Rent. I think his name's Jonathan Larson, who really focused all his time and effort on this one play that he wanted others to feel the same way that he did about it. And when he finally pitched it to people and showed it off, they were like, "That was great, but like, what else do you have going on?" And it made him pause and say, "What? Why do you feel like I should have more? This was what I've been working on." And that's kind of the approach that I've been taking with my art as of lately. That's why there's three projects going on at the same time. It's a nice thing that when I do get creatively stuck, I just move to the next thing. I'm not so hell bent on got to finish it, got to make it perfect as much as if the inspiration strikes over here, let's go over there and take some energy over there, and then I'll come back. And that's kind of where I've been. It's like Sun and the Jewel of Ove has not been touched for over a year, while Doom Destiny Wrestling has been getting a lot of hands-on treatment as inspiration has been striking.
Yeah, I'm very similar in a lot of ways, but good for me. Like I find that I'll kind of start multiple projects and kind of have multiple things going at the same time, and then I'll kind of get hyper fixated on one and kind of forget about the others, and then it's like, wait a minute, I totally forgot that I had this thing. And like it's kind of
Yes.
it's both, it helps and also hurts at the same time, because like you're saying, like on the one hand, you got multiple things going on, you kind of can jump around when you're feeling creatively stuck with one, but then also like for me personally, I get frustrated sometimes, kind of like, but I want to be finishing things. I don't want to like keep starting and then not finishing. That's for me one of the hard parts of that whole
Yes.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always hard when those kinds
Yeah.
of things happen because um, I always want to finish my projects, but I always am aware that if I start resenting the project, I'll never get back to it. So it's always something where it's a
Right.
balancing act of am I still enjoying this or is it starting to become something that feels labor intensive?
Right. Right. Yeah. I wanted to ask you, just to kind of circle back on something that you touched on before with one of your projects. You had mentioned like this idea about one of them kind of has like the spiritual aspect to it. Is that kind of is that in like a Dragon Ball sort of way, or like what's that about, and where's that kind of come from?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I'm a huge wrestling fan, and everyone kind of knows that it's predetermined slash scripted. I think that's not a secret. So as you have this kind of really cool sandbox to work with, where you'll have characters who, like the Undertaker, for example, who deals with the dead, or people who, bite people or whatever it may be, like some weird gimmicks that these people have.
Yeah.
Just existing in this sandbox that feels real, but also like anything can happen. So when I was thinking about Doom Destiny Wrestling, it was from the space of if everybody at home believes that it's fake, what could actually happen into this ring and make people feel like, oh, well, it's just all part of the show. So, for example, if the main character and the villain are fighting against each other, and the villain makes the main character disappear or kills somebody on screen, even people are just going to think it's part of the show. So it really starts playing into this element of let's take advantage of our audience thinking that it's all just an act.
Mm. So in the show, the audience is not aware of the powers and whatnot that the wrestlers have. Interesting.
Correct.
That's a cool approach. That's a cool approach.
Hmm.
I like that. 'Cause I was kind of I was under the impression that like it was kind of like in the same way of like a superhero, like an Invincible sort of show where it's kind of understood, like these people have superpowers. These are like superheroes, and like it's just kind of like it's wrestling with higher stakes. But it's a cool kind of added
Hmm.
element where it's not known to the audience. And that's a cool little twist. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
everyone who's a wrestling
So
fan has this level of cynicism to them that feel like they know it's fake. They know that it's not real. So being able to flip it on its head and have it be like that cynicism comes against your better judgment when you're watching the program is an interesting flip to play with there.
yeah, yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot. It's a again. I like the way you think. Like I really like your creative style. It's really you got some really unique sort of ideas, and I'm really excited to see the final product. I
Thank
think
you.
it sounds like it sounds like a really cool project. Um,
Thank you very
I'm
much.
curious. This is a little bit of a controversial topic, but I'm curious to kind of hear your thoughts and opinions and if you utilize it all. And that is the whole like AI topic. Have you used it at all? Do you find it helpful at all in your process, or do you kind of avoid it like the plague?
That's a great question. I have never used AI for my creative process. I have very strong opinions about AI. I see the purpose of it for those who, for example, like are in graphic designing and using generative fill for like, expanding out a background. I see that as AI. I don't really have a major problem with that. Where I do have problems with AI is when it is taking from other artists and it is
Mm-hmm.
regurgitating. Like, for example, I see people who are doing like Studio Ghibli full short films, and it's just taking old Studio Ghibli
Yeah.
films and putting it into a blender. So I haven't used it. I have issue with others who use it, but I don't. I'm not that outspoken about it in ways that I'm going to comment on other people's work about it.
Right. Right. It's interesting. Just on the topic. So there are definitely certain programs that are coming out now that are what they call like ethical AI, where they kind of they've been trying to work. Because I think that is the biggest issue that people have with it is this idea about it skimming other people's work and kind of stealing work. That's been a huge issue that a lot of people have had with it. And so that's kind of something that's been people have been working on and trying to get around and whatever. It's another discussion that we don't really need to get into. But um, just a cool thing that I saw. Um, I don't know how much I could talk about it because like it's not. I don't know how much of it's like public, but there was a very cool company that I spoke with that they're doing this really cool stuff with AI where they're basically taking 2D images and creating 3D environments, which I had never seen before. Um, again, I'm not quite sure where they're getting all their data from. So again, I don't want to get too into the weeds about the all the details, but it was a very cool concept. And it'll be again the whole AI discussion is like something that could like you could spend hours talking about and I've spoken about it already at length and like it's not you know whatever on one foot I don't think it's as big of a threat as everybody thinks it is. At the same time, I think it's not as much of an end all be all that everyone thinks it is either. Um,
Hmm.
that's kind of like I guess we could leave it with that. But like I was kind of curious because it's definitely it's definitely useful in kind of um, helping. I don't want to say speed up the process, but helping like kind of get some rough concepting out there. I definitely don't
Yeah.
think, for a number of reasons, that it's usable in a final product, but in kind of like the ideation phase, it has its benefits. I would say. Um,
Yeah.
I'm kind of more interested in like the instead of the generative stuff, I'm more interested in the 2D to 3D AI stuff. Um,
Hmm.
because I think that A has less ethical issues. Um, And then B, I think it's also more useful just because the 2D stuff, the generative AI 2D stuff is just not that good. I don't think it's ever going to get
Yeah.
so great. That's just the truth. It's just from what I've seen, and and people will say, "Oh, what do you mean? Of course it's going to get better. Look how much it's gotten better in just the last couple of months and whatever." But I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see it being this like great replacer that like everyone's afraid of. That's kind of like just
Yeah.
my 2 cents on the matter. But I was just curious if
Yeah, I
because
totally
again,
agree
like
with you.
I think it's yeah. Again, like I said, like I think for like concepting and kind of like getting the initial, I guess you call it block out, or not even, but the initial kind of like idea on paper, it has its benefits there, but again,
Yeah.
nothing that comes out of it is usable for sure. And the stuff is just the quality of it is just not usable, like, and you see on social media now, like so much AI content. I can't tell you how much scrolling through like my for you page on Instagram, just like AI, just garbage, like just everywhere. It's left and right,
Hmm.
and like some of it's kind of fun and like entertaining because it's like I love the AI videos where it'll be like kind of like wacky things going on and whatever. Like it's kind of fun, but that's about as
Yeah.
far as it goes. Like I was saying to somebody recently that like I feel like the whole like AI video generators, what's gonna end up being is like if I want to send you a GIF and like I can't find one that I want, I can just quickly like type in, like give me a banana slipping on a human peel, whatever, like, and then like have that like pop it out, you know. But like, because again, it's not usable on a professional level, but it's like it's kind of fun and like cheeky,
Yeah. Yeah, I totally
It's
agree with
kind
you. I
of been
think
my
it's hard because there's since I work in like the ad agency industry, it feels like to your point, it's like where is the stopping point for a lot of people? And I feel the same way. I feel like there is a really great middle ground of ideas bouncing off and brainstorming, but I think people have, to your point also, have not figured out when's the stopping point for them to be able to use their own creative insights and creative minds. It just the full AI product is not what people really want to see on social media. They want to see a mixture of both.
yeah, 100%. And it's interesting. I see a lot of AI stuff. Like the big place I've seen it in like a quote unquote, I guess you call it like professional setting in terms of like final output. A lot of advertising I've seen has been using
Hmm.
AI, like billboards and posters and stuff. And from a, I guess, like corporate perspective, I understand like yeah, it's cheaper and easier, but again, the quality is just not there. And so if it's
Yeah.
if you're just pumping out garbage ads to try and get somebody to come into your store, like okay, you put out garbage, you'll get garbage, like, and but
Hmm.
people are also selling stuff from like Temu, so, like there's like it's we're kind of like living in this world of like just circulating garbage everywhere.
I agree, and that's the thing. I know that there's so many agencies that have ad agencies that have like like AI councils and so forth. But yeah, like you mentioned, so many things are falling through the cracks, and so many things are being put on billboards, and it's so obvious to people who are of a certain age demographic that can tell that it's AI, and it just looks, to your point, like slop. It's not doing anything.
Yeah, 100%. So I'm curious, like looking ahead to the future for you personally, um, in a perfect world scenario, where do you kind of see things like playing out? Like obviously, your 9 to 5 is creative, and you kind of I guess scratch that creative itch there. But it sounds like you'd much prefer to be working in the animation industry in a professional setting, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So, like I mentioned, my 9 to 5 is doing social media strategy. It is something where I'm very passionate about that. It's really cool to be able to do that. The art stuff is great stuff for me to be able to separate a hobby from my career, which is a lovely thing to do. I think future goals and future things that I would love to see come out of this. I've been fortunate enough to pitch the three concepts that we've talked about to numerous places. I've been able to do it to, both small scale and large scale companies, which is a lovely and a surreal thing to be able to do. I never thought that would happen. And I think that's kind of where I am enjoying having it be at the moment, is taking my time, having it be on my own time of when these projects come out, how far along they are, and then perhaps I want to do like webtoons with maybe the first two episodes of each of these projects, but I don't see in a realistic way me making episodic form content in a full animated scope by myself of all these projects. So the overall goal is, I think I mentioned it previously, like get some grants, get some people on staff, maybe even once again pitch this to somewhere where they want to pick it up. But if not, we'll do the webtoons, we'll have some trailers, and we'll have some fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you in theory want to work for whatever a studio? As in, even if you're not working on your own projects, but would you in theory want to work for a studio as an animator or as a designer or something, kind of where you're kind of a cog in a bigger machine, but you still kind of get to work in animation in a professional setting?
Yeah, I don't think I have any ego when it comes to that kind of things. I think I was really grateful I was able to get into like a second round of a Netflix apprenticeship for animation, which apparently people got rejected for. I don't know how I got that far, but it was surreal to be able to be in a process where I moved to another round. So I am interested in that stuff, and the door is not closed in regards to that. I think it comes down to I would love to do those kinds of things in the future, but I'm not actively seeking them because I think for me personally, I feel with how I am, I'll see my name in a credit, and I say, "All right, I'm done. That was good. I one time is enough." So uh, I think
Uh-huh.
that's kind of where I have my whole life to be able to find when that opportunity comes. I don't want to chase after it.
Interesting. So what is it that drives you? Like, is I'm trying to think how to pose this question properly.
Yeah.
With animation, is it like something that you're super passionate about that you feel like is kind of a dream of yours, or is it kind of something that you kind of like to keep as a hobby, but you don't want to necessarily make a career out of it?
Yeah, it's hard. I think animation is my passion and it's something that I love to do, but I think the idea of jumping into it as a career may sully it. It may make it into something where it feels
Mm,
like work. It doesn't make it feel fun. And I think I try my best in my own social life, in my social media strategy life, in my corporate life to separate the two. So like I'll never do animation in my 9 to 5 job, even if people know that I do it. So I passionately want to work in animation, but I am very aware and afraid that if I work in animation, is my life going to drastically change in what I'm used to, or is this going to be? There's just a lot of things. I think it's a
yeah,
large question that I have been trying to figure
yeah,
out for a long time, honestly.
yeah. But let me ask you, and I hope you don't mind me asking this, but like, do you think that's just
Yeah,
fear
sure.
talking of like, the taking that risk of kind of jumping in with both feet into a field that is maybe a little bit more uh, tumultuous and less secure than a more corporate gig.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you. I think it is. I think if I'm being genuine and honest, I think there is a level of fear to it. I think being so close to the art world and having so many mutuals who are in studios and in positions where they're working on cool things, like you mentioned, Invincible, and they talk about how in flux it constantly is. It is definitely something
Yeah,
where that's where my hesitation comes in of do I want that to be where I'm at? Uh, Whereas right now I got something really good going where my career is a lot more stable. I don't have to worry about the future of advertising. I know advertising is always going to be there, whereas I know 2D animation is something where people keep scaling back on. So to your point, yes, it's a lot of fear, but yeah, we'll see what happens if the future if 2D has another resurgence. But for right now, yeah, it doesn't seem like something where I want to jump in.
Yeah. No, I get that. I get that. Um, have you gone to like any expos or kind of like shows of any sort to kind of do networking within the animation design world?
Yeah, so I've been to a few Comic Cons, a few expos. I'm not someone who usually sells things at these expos, but I love to go and find other artists. I think I'm a natural introvert, which is a hard thing to be when you are also trying to find networking moments and opportunities. But I always try my best as I'm at these expos, as I'm at these different events to communicate with different artists, find new artists. It is very much, excuse me, I love finding artists that haven't been found yet. So that's usually where more of my energy goes in rather than networking with people who have already made it. Because I think there is a level of what are you trying to find or get out of this interaction when you talk to people who have already made it. So I try my best not to network with too many people who feel like you're looking for something.
I get that. I get that. Again, it's like all your other work. You definitely have a unique approach to how you're approaching this whole kind of field, but it's cool. It's it's very interesting. Like I think a lot of people who are doing this feel very strongly like I want to make a career out of this. This is what I want to do, and I'm gonna kind of do whatever it takes to make my way. But it's interesting that you kind of have this. I don't know if I think for lack of a better term, this balance between keeping it fresh, keeping it enjoyable, keeping it a hobby, while also kind of maintaining the humble attitude of constantly trying to learn and constantly trying to improve. It's really refreshing to see. That's for sure. Um,
Hmm.
just it's yeah. No, I'm just I'm thinking of like people who I want to introduce you to, like just because I think yeah. I think you have. I mean, I've seen from what I've seen that you have a lot of potential to like do really great work, and like it's it's a shame when there are people who are good at something, especially in the creative field. When somebody's like really good at
Yeah.
something and like they're not getting their due. Like because I
Yeah.
think I think we need more good work. There's a lot. I said this recently with somebody else. Like there's so much stuff out there, so much content out there. With Netflix and with Amazon Prime and with like all the different streaming platforms. There's so much content being put out there, but not a lot of high quality content. And so finding the really good stuff has gotten really difficult because like you're just sifting through all the stuff that's like mediocre at best, and it's just being
Yeah.
put out there because like you got to keep feeding the machine, and it's unfortunate that, like we're only kind of getting a handful of like really high quality stuff, especially in the animation space. Like you're kind of maybe not actually. Maybe the animation space has more higher quality things because I think people who are working in animation in general are doing it have more of a love for it than people who are doing like a reality TV show. you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that
it's
was very
hard.
cool.
It's a balance because I think it to your point, it's really trying to make sure or let me back up a little bit. I find that so many people who want their projects made start lying, start manipulating the system, and start acting out of character. They'll start talking about
Mm,
deals that they have and deals they don't have. I'm not going to throw names out there, of course, but I feel like there is definitely an air of people losing sight of why they got into it. And it's really they wanted to tell their stories. And I think they get caught up in the social media aspect of it and get caught up in the numbers. And I think That's one of the ways that
Yeah.
I'm very fortunate with what I have on my 9 to 5 is that I know how to keep my head on the ball and know that the numbers are going to fluctuate. The numbers aren't going to be great all the time. So I think that's where people get caught up as opposed to just focusing on their art, focusing on what they want to tell their story about.
Yeah. So that's a great transition because I wanted to ask you, um, kind of about the marketing side of things, and it sounds like you kind of have some experience in this with your 9 to 5, and so like, how do you sort of develop your social media presence, your quote unquote online brand, your personal brand? I'm asking for myself because like this is something that you know,
Yeah.
I try to focus more on the like creating side of things, and like the marketing side of things doesn't come naturally to me. And so I'm curious, like, what are kind of the strategies to create that persona online and that brand and that, um, like you said at the beginning, kind of like telling the story you want to be given over on social media.
Yeah. I think an honest story is always the one that's the easiest to retell. When people feel like it's not coming from an honest place, it's harder to be genuine on social media. So when I come, and you've seen this as well from seeing my work, when I come from a space of what we talked about earlier, I failed out of art school. I'm learning how to do this just like you. I don't know what I'm doing, but boy, am I going to try my hardest. It feels honest to people because it is honest to me. And I think that's where it starts. It starts from what is real to you. So, for example, with this in your podcast, if this is you're really trying to elevate voices or something like that, people are going to feel it, whether it's authentic or not. Not speaking to you specifically, but whatever it is, people know and can feel authenticity, and people can feel how important it is to people. So, what I always try to do on my social media is make sure people can feel me through the content. People can feel that I really care about this stuff. So, like Doom Destiny Wrestling, they know if they follow my social media pages, I'm big into wrestling. I'll also post other wrestling things that are on my social media pages. So, that authenticity really comes and people can sniff it from a mile away. If you are doing
Mm.
this because you want the numbers, people are going to find out. People are not going to like that, and people are going to rebel against that. So, I always tell brands if your story you're telling is coming from a place that you genuinely want to help consumers, then people are going to react positively. But if you're just here specifically to sell product, people are going to see through it. People aren't going to engage with it. People aren't going to want it. So that's the same kind of motto that I bring to my day to day and my work that I have on my art.
That's very well said. A very good perspective to have. It's yeah, yeah, and I'd say like just in my personal experience, like in seeing your work, like that's really I think a big part that kind of made me gravitate towards it is that kind of the honesty of just like kind of showing your process and like showing, but it was kind of a combination of that and also the quality of work. Like as in if a person goes out there and is very genuine and very honest, but putting out very low quality stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know that necessarily translates the same way.
Yeah, it could. I think that's the interesting thing. I think then the story becomes I'm learning as I'm going, or take the ride with me and see how I progress over time. I think that's the interesting thing
Mm.
is that people who have terrible artwork, quote unquote, I don't think anyone's artwork's terrible. They're just showing it in a different way. But I think they just have, to your point, have to find the marketing angle of what's the story I'm trying to tell. If you've been doing art for 50 years and you don't feel like you're progressing, make the story about how that's the story. I have not felt like I'm progressing. I'm going to practice more. I'm going to learn how to finally draw hands. Like, I think that's what it is. A if people have bad quality work, they need to work on their story.
Mm. Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess everything is storytelling. That's really, whatever it is that we're
Hmm.
doing, whether it's animation and film or, you know, obviously creative writing and all things, but even yeah, like even just marketing. You make a soap brand or whatever it is. Like you're telling a story in one way or another, whether it's in the traditional sense or in a more subconscious sense. That's I think that's what we're all doing always. Just
Yeah.
um, two things that made me think of. One is my grandfather used to always say. He said he used to always say, "You have to be a really what was it? You have to have a really good memory if you're a liar." Because like when you tell a
Yep.
story over and over again, like so it's easier to just tell the truth. That was one. And
Exactly.
then
I
another thing
think there's
that
so many people.
another what was that?
No, I just was gonna say, I think there's so many people on social media who try to live a social media lie, and it catches up with them.
Mm, yeah, yeah, for sure. And then the other quote that I heard that unfortunately I don't remember where I heard it, but I really liked it when I heard it. It really resonated with me, and that is there are two types of people: pretenders and doers. And like when I heard that, I was like, it was just so true. And it's like better to be a doer than
Hmm.
a pretender, because like you could pretend from today till the end of the time, but you're much better off just doing it. Stop pretending that you're doing
Exactly.
animation. Just go out and do it. You know what I'm saying? And like it'll be better for you.
Yeah.
You'll live a happier life. You'll be more fulfilled because you're actually doing the thing you want to be doing. So stop pretending to be doing whatever it is and start doing it.
I completely agree. And I think that's why I've always had the transparency of I'm not going to be making episodic content. I think people come to my page, they think that that's what it's going to be. And I always try to make sure I dispel that myth or that expectation real quick because we've talked about it. I'm a
Mm.
team of one. It is ridiculous for me to think that I'm going to be making a 24 episode season or even 4 episodes of a season. So
Yeah.
I it's really just making sure people know what they're signing up for as they invest into a creator.
Yeah. So let me ask you on the topic of kind of your projects and stuff you've kind of been working on. What are some projects that have really taught you about yourself?
Yeah, I think all of them have. I think that's a great question in regards to. I kind of talked about I mentioned it in passing with the Tick Tick Boom story. I think the next part of that same scene is that what you should do after these critics say, "What are you going to do next?" is write from what you know. And I think that's what I've been doing for the past 5 years at this point is writing from what I know, uh, trying to keep it authentic to me. It's been teaching me a lot about the things that I don't really like to talk about in my social media or aspects that I want to show myself on social media. I can do through my artwork. It is an interesting thing to do. Like one of my characters for Sun the Jewel of Ove is hard of hearing, which I am as well, but I don't talk about often. But I was able to put it into a character and write scenarios that feel like scenarios that I've encountered on my day to day life. Is just finding parts of myself in these characters that I've written.
So how do you like approach a a project where you want to kind of touch on these things that are maybe um, very intimate or things that you don't necessarily want to say outright, but you do want to kind of express them through your artwork. Like, how do you kind of approach it? 'Cause I'm sure that's kind of unsettling, and it's not, that's not so easy all the time.
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's like for example, this character's son who has hard of hearing. I myself, like I mentioned, am hard of hearing, but I'm not within that community. I don't engage with that community on social media. I don't participate in trying to learn more or learn sign language or anything like that. So as I'm coming to a character like that is coming from a place of sincerity and honesty, like I've talked about, of I'm not going to try to show those things with this character. It is more uh, environmental noise makes it really hard for me to hear because I'm half deaf. So when you go into a audio component of writing things, you have it written out in a script. This character has a really hard time hearing in this scenario, or their hearing aid just knocked out. This is what it sounds like. It is coming from a lived experience and not trying to step past that lived experience, and not trying to educate people in spaces that I don't have any experience in.
How do you, I guess, what's your relationship, for lack of a better term, with critical feedback and kind of, you know,
Mm.
do you go and seek critiques and critical feedback on not even the storytelling aspect of it, more in terms of the art side of things? Like, do you go out and seek that critical feedback? I'm sure on social media people give you their unsolicited opinions, but what's kind of your experience with feedback and with critiques and stuff of that, that nature?
Yeah, when I first started making my own stories, I was part of this creative feedback program that was called Rise Up Animation. It was in efforts to give diverse voices more seats at the table in animation. So I was able to get some portfolio feedback and those kinds of things for portfolio that I had never even tried to create before. So I've had feedback in the past, but as I'm actually trying to write these stories, it's I haven't sought that because it feels like these are the characters that I see in my mind. I don't want external people to tell me how to shape them. Of course,
Mm.
if this is something where others were getting brought onto the project and if it was getting to a studio, I'd be open to that. But as someone who is doing the rigging, is doing the creating, is doing the drawing, it feels like almost too many cooks in the kitchen. It's stopping and starting and stopping the process where I don't need it. It's like to your point, people on the internet are going to tell me if there's a glaring problem, but if there is not a glaring problem, I got to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm. Because I guess again, it gets back to the point of like you're doing it from a place of creative expression and kind of trying to get that story out there, get those ideas onto paper, and less about the perfectionism aspect of it, and like everything has to be of the
Mhm.
highest standard, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, like it's good to just create, and just kind of allow that creativity to flow uninhibited. Um, yeah,
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 I feel like a lot of people would never create if they have to live up to perfection. So I try my best
yeah.
as I'm creating to know that perfect is not achievable and it's never going to be exactly the way I envisioned it. So along the way, just be excited that it's getting close to what you envisioned. And when it comes time that you're tweaking it for a little bit too long, that's okay. It's time to put it out in the world and let people tell you how they feel about it.
So on that note specifically, like how do you personally know when a project is finished?
Yeah. Um, when I'm tired of working on it, honestly. It's an interesting one because I did a horror short last year that's called He Is Greater, which dealt with my relationship with religion and growing up in religion, but moving away from that. It was I had an idea of how it was supposed to look, and what the end goal was a 15-second video. And I knew it was finished when all those aspects were there. I felt comfortable about all the effort that I did, and knowing that it was the first time that I had ever finished a project, it that was enough for me. I think it's really just looking at the optimistic
Mm,
side of it of do I feel like right now in this moment this is the best effort that I could do?
yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I mean, I went to heard this another quote. I'm full of quotes today, um, and that is it's a good artist knows when to start. A great artist knows when to stop. Something to that extent. Like
Mm.
because you could kind of tweak something forever and ever and constantly go back and constantly revise and constantly trying to fix things. But at a certain point, you got to just say, all right, like it's I don't know, even not even like a good enough thing, but it's like I have to put the pen down and put this out there because otherwise it's going to sit on my shelf forever and
Exactly.
it's never going to see the light of day. And what good is that going to do? Like what does that do? So yeah, yeah.
I totally agree.
So let me ask you, looking back, kind of what are some things that you know now that you kind of wish you had knew from the beginning? Because you've obviously come a
Mhm.
long way and you've learned a lot. And again, you've taken a very kind of unconventional path. But kind of if you could go back to yourself, either in school or right after school, when you kind of began this journey, what are some things that you kind of wish you could go back and tell yourself?
Mhm. It's a great question. I think learning how to say no is a huge one. I tell upcoming artists that not every opportunity is the right opportunity for you. And it's a really hard thing to learn. It's a really hard thing to accept. But one day you'll have someone who you never thought would interact with your stuff come to you and say, I want to work with you. And their terms will be so outlandish that you will bend backwards trying to fit their expectations. And it's really trying to learn how to exercise your voice, how to express your boundaries. And it is imperative as a creative to find your voice. It's imperative as a creative to also find when is your time not being valued. And so I would make sure that as if I was just getting started again or telling someone else who was just coming up to find their voice, to find ways to say, hey, maybe I need a little bit more budget. This is time is not going to be able to work for me or whatever it may be. That way, when you are showing up in the instances, in the scenarios that are right for you, you're putting your best foot forward. So I think that's probably the number one that I would tell my past self.
Yeah, it's a very good piece of advice. The I think a lot of people, especially people starting out, feel the need to say yes to everything because an opportunity is an opportunity, and you can't turn down anything because what if you kind of get this like anxiety of like, well, what if another opportunity doesn't present itself, and you a lot of times put yourself into situations where you are making yourself crazy and like you're not you're not giving yourself the like value that you really deserve. You're not valuing your time and your abilities to the extent that they should be. And I think it hurts yourself. It hurts other people in the industry, and yeah, no, it's a very,
Yeah.
very, you know, definitely a good lesson that it seems like you learned.
Yeah, I
How many
think
times
it's
have you had that
definitely
kind of situation
one
where you've,
where I've had that happen more times than I'd like to count. I think it's hard because you also will have scenarios where everything is going perfectly. Like this celebrity, for example, you really have always wanted to work with hits you up. And you're like, like this is amazing. And then you're about to work together and then it doesn't work out. And you were about to, let's say, do this project $200 less than you would normally do it. Or you would do the project
right?
in 2 weeks less than you were supposed to do it. So I've had that happen numerous times, and it's been something where every time that it's happened, if they passed on the opportunity, I'm glad they passed on the opportunity. If I asserted my boundaries and they passed on the opportunity, and when I've overextended myself, I've always regretted it. So
Yeah.
it's been a lot of times where I've had both ways.
So let me ask you, like, how often are you taking on these sort of like freelance commission, whatever you want to call them, these sort of gigs in the animation space? Because at the beginning you kind of said that this is something you do on the weekends. It's kind of again, sort of a hobby. Um, so how often are you kind of taking on these whatever you want to call them, commissions or side hustles or whatever however you want to categorize it?
Yeah. I want to say that I never openly take commissions. I think there's been probably 2 years that I have not outwardly expressed that I am taking commissions. Just because, to the point that you just mentioned, I'm only doing this on the weekends. I would rather have my weekends be spent with other things to get my mind off of whatever I want to get my mind off of. So I haven't for the past 2 years expressly outwardly said that I'm doing commissions, but I do have commissioners or people who ask for commissions pretty frequently, that I work with throughout the year. So I probably will do at this point maybe one commission a month at this point, just
Mm-hmm.
because there are people who I've worked with for years, or clients that are really high profile clients that I want to maintain those relationships with. But past that, I don't usually take on, hey, I have an album cover, I have $150, you want to do that? Definitely say no. I never just take any opportunity that just rolls on my table at this point.
Yeah, that's cool. But I didn't realize that you're kind of doing. I mean, obviously, you're saying it's not a lot, but it's cool that you're still kind of doing that and kind of keeping those channels open. It's nice for you also that like you have that ability to like make a little money from doing the thing that you love to do in addition to your 9 to 5.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to be able to have when I need it. I know that if anything were to happen with my 9 to 5, I'd be able to turn that faucet back on. But for the time being,
Right.
it is like we talked about before. I want to make sure that when I show up to a project, I'm bringing my best self. I'm bringing my A game. I don't want to take on a project and just move through the motions and then give someone a product that doesn't look like what I normally do. So, in the spirit of that,
Right.
I'm very selective with the stuff that I move forward with.
Let me ask you, just out of curiosity, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's totally fine. You know, if you want to keep it off the record, I won't hold it against you. But you touched upon this idea. You had this horror short that was based off of um, your experience with religion and how you grew up. Are you willing to talk about that? I'm curious to kind of hear about your experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely open to it. Any questions that you have, I'm an open book.
So kind of what was your experience that kind of, first of all, what was your experience that inspired this horror project, and then how did you kind of express that in the short, I don't know what you call it, a short film, an animatic, whatever,
Yeah.
however you want to categorize it.
Yeah. Yeah, so I was raised in Christian environments for my whole entire life. Um, Very Christian environments my whole entire life. So ones where, um, it will go from being just normal salvation to ones where your friends are going to hell because they believe slightly different things than you. So um, it was one where you don't know what's up, you don't know what's down. You kind of have to start searching and finding the answers for yourself. I have been an atheist for majority of my life because of that, because it has just become something where it was not something that I really felt like was an environment situation that felt like one that I really wanted to dedicate myself to. So, but I was
Yeah.
in Christian environments and schools my whole entire childhood and into high school. So it shaped my whole entire upbringing and my life, whether I want to admit it or not. So that being said, it was one where my friends that were also growing up during that time were also of that faith and also of that intensity. So when I came into art and I wanted to express things, it started to be, how can I talk about this in a way that feels authentic to my experience, but also doesn't feel sensational? It doesn't feel like sensationalism. It doesn't also, make fun of people for how they believe in a certain belief system. Is just very much about my experiences. So, excuse me. So what I did is I came up with "He Is Greater," which is a horror short that I put out last year. It is pretty much just feeling like you're in this robotic system of speaking in quotes or speaking in verses and things that you've been taught how to say. It just feels like parroting. It feels like there's no emotion behind it. And I have that in the short film of just people who are, or beings that are just programmed to say this and say it to someone that they can't see. And meanwhile, Greater, quote unquote, the character Greater is this giant hulking being that all this energy, all this prayer just makes them more of an intense, more of a self-seeking being. And at the end of the
Mm.
thing, he like lunges at the camera. So it's just putting a lot of energy and a lot of faith into something you can't see is a horrifying thing that I don't think gets the same uh, eyes on it. It's kind of like we people who are of Christian faith kind of see it with rose-colored glasses, but because you might be brought up in that system where you find comfort in it, but giving all your energy and power and thoughts to something, anything, whatever it may be, is a horrifying fact.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you went with the horror route to express that. It's a an interesting angle because like initially and just the way you describe it also because initially you hear horror, especially in the context of like religion, and you think like of sort of traditional negative experiences with a religious figure. But it's interesting
Yeah,
how you kind of take that to a different place. Have you ever read the book American Gods by Neil Gaiman?
I haven't.
I feel like you would enjoy it because it kind of touches on that theme of like the the belief that people give to any given thing kind of empowers that thing to have sway over the people that they and so
Hmm.
it's a really interesting book because he kind of goes into this. It's kind of like the old gods versus the new gods. That's kind of the premise. So it's like the Norse mythology and Greek mythology and Egyptian mythology and those kind of like deities, and then kind of how when people came from the old world to the new world, how they kind of dropped those belief systems and started taking up beliefs in and the new gods, so to speak, are like technology and these different things, and then
Hmm.
kind of how people have shifted their belief system. It's a very and the kind of the conflict between the two belief systems. It's very well written. It's my favorite book of all time. They made it into a TV show on
I'll have to
Stars
check
a
it
couple years
out.
back, and yeah, the TV show, in my opinion, did not do the book justice at all. I didn't like how they did the TV show. Um, in general, I'm a big Neil Gaiman fan. I know he's kind of in hot water right now, but I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah.
And in general, a lot of his work has been translated from the books to the screen. And the only example of his work that I've seen that's been done well in translating it was Coraline. Um, any
Oh
other
yeah.
of his work that's kind of yeah that any of his work that did the translation, I found it didn't. Did you see Good Omens? Did you watch that show?
No, I didn't. I heard of it though.
Yes, that's another one of his books, and that was also it was pretty good, the translation, but it was also with him just with if one thing I love about his work is his writing style. He's a masterful
Hmm.
writer. I mean, like he's a wordsmith, and so like the you can't translate that onto the screen. You know what I'm saying? Like because a
Yeah.
visual medium is very different than a text-based medium, and no matter how good of a director and screenwriter and all the things you have, there's just certain things that you can't capture from a page on a screen. It's not possible, and
I agree.
I highly recommend.
I have to check
Highly,
this
highly
out.
recommend.
I've never
I
heard
can't
of it.
recommend. Yeah, yeah. I think you'd enjoy it. It seems like it's kind of up your alley. And in general, his work in general, he has this really unique style. Really, I kind of call it like weird fiction, where it's not your typical run of the mill sci-fi fantasy, or any of those other or dark fantasy, or whatever you want to call it. Like he has a very unique take on things and a very unique approach
Hmm.
to creativity that I love. I could give you a list of his books that to read because
Definitely
they're,
have to check it
they're
out.
excellent in my opinion. Yeah, yeah. No, I think you'd enjoy it. It seems very much in line with your sort of style. Yeah. Um. So last question. Well, we could wrap this up, and this is a question I try to pose to everybody, and that is, how do you define success?
Yeah, I it's a big question. I find success to be, whew, let me think about this one because I want to give you a real answer rather than off the cuff. I feel like Success is really subjective. I feel like success is, for me, I think my lack of answer is kind of the telling point of what success is for me. I think it is when I feel happy. I feel like success is not something that I'm usually striving for. I feel like it is success for me is usually unattainable. It is a middle point. So I think I'm always trying to strive towards, oh, am I happy? And if I'm not happy, then I'm not successful. So I think success is the middle point between happiness or unhappiness, usually for me. And it doesn't necessarily mean that success in my ventures equals to happiness or unhappiness, as much as I strive for just making sure my mental health is always at the best it can be. So success in my artwork usually means, am I letting the numbers affect me? Am I keeping in touch with people who I really care about? Making sure that I'm not completely becoming an introvert, which is my natural nature. So that's what success looks like for me, is trying to make sure all systems are go on the other ways that aren't related to my work.
Yeah. A perfect balance, as all things should be.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So where can everybody find you online?
Yeah, for sure. Everywhere I am like Shirdan. So Mikeshirdan, everywhere. So that can be on TikTok, that can be on YouTube, that could be on Instagram, any social media platform. I'm there. Welcome to find me.
Perfect. All right, amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really, really enjoyed our conversation. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mo. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I appreciate your support. I appreciate you finding me and taking the time. And we've talked about this earlier at the podcast, but letting me be a part on your platform. Everyone does have a platform, and even if your platform is small, especially when your platform is small, letting other people stand on it with you is a wonderful thing. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I really, really enjoyed our conversation, and keep up the great work. You really, I think you're really on a great path, and I hope to see some really great things come out of you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.